Hey guys, it's John. Welcome back to Blood, Sweat, and Popcorn, where we talk movies. I'm continuing my 2021 film challenge, where every day for a year I see a new movie that I have never ever seen. So in week 2, we're exploring the 1930s. I've always been a big fan of the classics. I've seen many of them myself already, and so this was kind of a treat. So thanks for joining me, and let's go ahead and get started. So day 1, we have Dracula from 1931, and this one just shoots out the gate. It just begins and it goes within 5 minutes. We're already seeing Dracula and his brides. We see them coming out of their coffins in his creepy aesthetic of a castle he lives in. And I mean, we get a classic performance from Bela Lugosi. Like, this guy, he set the trend of what Dracula should sound like, should look like, should be like. This man is Dracula.
I am Dracula.
I feel many of us know the beats of the Dracula story by now. You know, he leaves Transylvania, he goes to London, he woos Lucy, he woos Mina, and he ends up battling it out with Van Helsing. I still prefer Coppola's Dracula over this one.
Mina!
You think you can destroy me? You're mine.
But this one's pretty good. You have the landmark Lugosi performance, you have everyone else pulling their weight, it looks great, it sounds great, and it still holds up today. And Dracula gets an A. So day 2, and we're moving right along here, we have 1932's Scarface. Not the Tony Montana story that a lot of us are aware of with Al Pacino. No, this just has a guy named Tony with a literal scar on his face. This is like the model gangster picture. So this is essentially based on Al Capone himself, right? It's the story of a guy named Tony and his rise through the ranks of the Italian mafia in Chicago, and he fights with the Irish in the north. He takes over the business from his boss, steals his boss's girlfriend, and he refers to a Tommy gun as a typewriter.
I got machine guns you can carry. I had some of them, I could run the whole works in a month.
And they just had those great ways of talking, those funny little accents. This neighborhood is ours, see? Sorry about that. This one won me over right away. It hooked me in immediately. There's a great opening scene, involves a hit being carried out on somebody, and this scene doesn't let up. It's just a great film, end to end. So if you ask me, go see Scarface. It's definitely worth a watch. It still holds up today, and it gets an A+. So third on my list is another film from 1932, and that's The Mummy. I'm definitely working through all the Universal classic horror monsters right now. It's great. I love it. So I enjoyed Boris Karloff's performance as the mummy Imhotep. But the movie as a whole didn't really frighten me or really excite me either. It was really short, and it still managed to bore me a little bit. I felt it could have delivered more scares, but even the atmosphere with all the cool Egyptian artifacts and props and atmosphere and curses, it just didn't punch hard enough. It didn't leave me wanting more when it was done. Maybe I'm just corrupted by my own experience, and I grew up in the remakes, so maybe this is why that's the Mummy that I prefer. So Boris Karloff did fine, he did great, but for Boris and the gang as a whole, it just didn't win me over enough. The Mummy gets a C. I did think it was odd that The Mummy and Dracula both had Swan Lake music over their opening credits, like the exact same song. Weird. If you know what that's about, let me know. Put a comment down and tell me what I'm missing. Okay. On day 4, we had the big, the bad, we had King Kong from 1933. Man, this one was a lot of fun. I really liked the King Kong I saw that came out in the 70s, and I love Peter Jackson's King Kong. I think that film's a masterpiece. But there is something so charming about this version, this original version of King Kong. It's the crude effects that it was made with that make it so enchanting and endearing. And they pull out all the stops on this one. For the time it was made in, they threw everything they had at King Kong. You had live action, back projection, stop motion, models, matte paintings. Like the whole 9 yards was in this movie. And for having only a modest budget for 1933, they pulled it off pretty well. Like, even the shots of Fay Wray being held by that fake ape paw, it worked. It was like, it's fake. But it still, grips you. Literally, it grips you. I mean, it's easy from this vantage point in 2021 to knock something, to knock a film that was made in the 30s because it's old or whatever. Looking at you, mummy. But there's a brilliance to King Kong. A true brilliance. If you're a horror fan, you cannot miss this movie. If you are sincerely going to call yourself a horror fan, you have to give this King Kong a shot if you've never seen it. It's very, very good. I really enjoy myself watching it. So give King Kong a shot. Warts and all, is pretty alright to look at. I give it an A+. So next up we have Duck Soup from 1933. Oh man, this movie was ridiculous. This was my first time seeing anything from the Marx Brothers. I've read about the Marx Brothers. They've been referenced in other mediums, films, TV, but this was my first experience. This was my introduction, my first introduction to the Marx Brothers, and it was so hilarious. So, I'm a huge fan of the show MASH, especially the character of Hawkeye, because he's such a smart aleck. He's so quick-witted and funny with everybody.
Good evening, ladies and germs. I'm sorry I'm late, but my watch stopped. It had to. It's been running fast all week.
Are you the Yankee Doodle Doctor?
I certainly am.
And when I saw this movie, I realized that's where that fast-paced, quick-witted, delivery of zingers came from, where Hawkeye got his smart alecky nature. It was all Groucho Marx, just one-liner after one-liner after one-liner.
Gentlemen, Ciccolini here may talk like an idiot and look like an idiot, but don't let that fool you. He really is an idiot.
I mean, it's true. Groucho Marx delivers punch after punch in Duck Soup. So in this movie, Groucho Marx becomes the appointed leader of this fictional country called Fredonia. So he ends up being spied on by members of the rival country, Sylvania. The leader of Sylvania wants to annex Fredonia. He sends his spies in to spy on Groucho Marx in hopes of finding some dirt or something to help mobilize a revolution so Sylvania can come in and take over Fredonia. The catch is that the spies are played by Chico and Harpo Marx. So with a constant back and forth with all these characters, it leads to this rhythm of a gag a minute or a joke a minute type of film that is just nonstop laughter. I mean, I laughed constantly. And some of the stuff can be considered a little crass and inappropriate for 2021's standards. But if you watch it with the context of when this movie was made, you're going to laugh just as hard as I did. Duck Soup gets an A. On day 6, Errol Flynn charms everybody as Robin of Locksley in 1938's The Adventures of Robin Hood. My microphone is covered in cat hair. Great. What a fun, colorful, swashbuckling rendition of Robin Hood this was. This was such a treat. I mean, I'm sure we've all seen a version of Robin Hood before. So I'm assuming we all know the story more or less. We have Robin Hood, we have Little John, we have Friar Tuck, and they're fighting the Sheriff of Nottingham, the Guy of Gisborne, Prince John. There's an archery contest. They hide out in Sherwood Forest. You know, they all get pardoned and saved when Richard the Lionheart, the king, comes back into England and saves the day. You know, he pardons Robin Hood, and he gives him lands and titles, and everyone goes off into the sunset, and life's great. I mean, if you haven't seen any Robin Hood movie at this point, I don't know what to tell you, but I will say this is a great place to start. What makes this one so enjoyable is the incredible cast. You have Errol Flynn as Robin Hood, Olivia de Havilland as Maid Marian, you have Claude Rains as Prince John, and Basil Rathbone of Sherlock Holmes fame as the Guy of Gisborne. There's great fight scenes, like the choreography is amazing. Even way back when, they knew how to film a fight scene. The sets look great, the locations are fantastic, you're like right immersed in Sherwood Forest or in the castle. Everyone has like some swag to them, everyone has some personality. No one's two-dimensional in this movie. This was a popcorn movie if I've ever seen one. The Adventures of Robin Hood gets an A. Our last movie from the 1930s comes from Frank Capra. He's one of the greats. And that is 1939's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. So Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is a political drama / comedy that takes place all in Washington, D.C., and a lot of it inside the Capitol building itself. And it deals with corruption and one genuine honest man's fight against it. So when this movie came out, it was critically acclaimed, but it was also publicly ostracized. Many people thought that Mr. Smith Goes to Washington was a very dangerous movie because of its portrayal of government corruption. Many theaters across the world, different countries, banned it from being aired and being shown. But it's a great story. It's a story of an everyman, Jeffrey Smith, played by James Stewart, who I first saw in the movie Vertigo, that great film by Alfred Hitchcock. I highly recommend Vertigo as an aside. But back to James Stewart. So James Stewart plays this character named Jeffrey Smith. And as Jeff Smith, he comes from this state where, as the film opens, the senator of the state he lives in passes away. One of the senators. And so the governor of the state taps Jeff to go join the senior senator and represent that state inside Congress. The reason that Jeff is chosen to do this job is because he's very charming, he has innocence, he has naivete, and he's seemingly easy to manipulate. He's kind of like a bumpkin from the country. Ultimately, his appointment to Congress is rooted in this master plan to have him be a stooge and do whatever the senior senator, who is corrupted, tells him to do. Claude Rains, who makes his second appearance on this list after The Adventures of Robin Hood, plays that senior senator. And they never say what state that they're from. They just say that it's out west. They never say who's Democratic, who's Republican, nothing. It's just people in Congress and people in America. Jeff gets help and guidance from his new secretary, who actually was his predecessor's secretary, and she helps him how to understand the process of drafting and writing and creating a bill, how to converse in the Senate chambers, and basically how to find his own voice as a senator. Jeff Smith is a man of integrity, however, and he does not bow down to political corruption or political scheming. And because he doesn't do those things, the other senators try to blackball him right out of the Senate just as fast as he got in there. I relished Stewart's performance here, and he delivered here just like he delivered in Vertigo. He's definitely one of the best actors I've ever seen. His performance here was balanced so well between his innocent naivete and his unbridled passion to do good. to not hurt people, to not mislead people. There's this fantastic scene where he delivers a filibuster inside the Senate chambers, and it just drives everyone else crazy because they all have to be forced back in because he owns the floor. It's just a great scene. It's towards the end of the film. It's pretty much the climax of the movie, and it's just so gut-wrenchingly intense and fun. It's a great scene. It's really, really good.
I stand guilty as framed because Section 40 is graft. And I was ready to say so. I was ready to tell you that a certain man in my state, a Mr. James Taylor, wanted to put through this dam for his own profit. A man who controls a political machine.
And this film, while a bit long, it held my attention the entire time. And that's because of the sharp writing and the dynamic performances. It was rather fitting seeing this film during our current political climate. And it was so inspiring to see someone fight so earnestly for truth and goodness. Shouldn't be a surprise here, but Mr. Smith Goes to Washington gets an A+. So that was week 2. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I've seen a lot of classic films, what are considered classic films now, in my lifetime. So this whole week was just a lovely, lovely treat. Just brilliant films, end to end. My big takeaway from this week is that it's just funny how certain films used to end. Like when they were done, the climax was over, the story was ended. They were done. I think every film I saw this week had a title card at the end that said "The End" on it, and it came kind of abruptly, which I kind of appreciated. There's like this good sense of finality. They didn't leave things to drag on, and they just, we're done. Get out of the theater, go home. It was good. Also, almost all the films I watched this week have been remade or reimagined or whatever. Some of them have been remade to death. And I don't have enough of the 1930s catalog screened in my viewing history to give any other recommendations. The only 2 I could really recommend right now would be the ones I have seen, and that's Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz. But if you have any recommendations for this decade, I still need to see it happen one night. One day I will. I promise. But if you have any recommendations from the 1930s, please go ahead, leave me a comment, tell me what it is, and tell me why you think I'd like it. Okay, so my favorite this week is Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. This wasn't an easy choice because Scarface was in the running until I saw Mr. Smith. So coming up in week 3, we have independent movies. And the lineup I have selected, I read that they're all really good. I'm trying to see a lot of good movies if you haven't caught on. And I was surprised at how big some of these films are. You know, you think independent, you think small, low budget, small scale films. But these films that I've picked have a pretty good following, some of them. So I guess we'll have to see what I say come next week. So if you like this video and you like what I'm doing and you're liking this whole challenge I'm putting myself through, please like, subscribe, follow me on social media, leave me a comment, message me, let me know what you think I should see next. And this ties into Wildcard Week. What's Wildcard Week, John? Well, I'll tell you, Internet. The last 2 to 3 days of every month, I want you to pick the movie for me. Well, except February, because that doesn't have any extra days in it. Sorry, February. As long as I haven't already seen them, the top 2 to 3 movies per month with the most votes are the ones I'm going to watch for Wildcard Week, and they will be featured in my monthly wrap-up video where I'll divulge my pick of the month and any other channel news. So drop a recommendation in the comments, and we'll see what happens. It can be any movie you want to pick. Thank you all so much for stopping by and checking out the channel and checking out the journey I'm going on, and I'll see y'all in about a week. Until then, take care, guys.